Hello and welcome back to my channel, Bookish Lady Night, as we get a look behind the book. Today, I am joined by Rhea Riley, author of When the Rain Falls, and she is actually a very first debut author, so I'm really excited to talk to her. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, like I told you earlier, I found you on a engagement group, and another bookish account that had read your book had recommended it and said, hey, check out this book. So that's how I found you. So I'm very excited to chat with you, get to see, your writing style, learn a little bit more about the book and the characters, and maybe see what's next for you. So I am looking forward to today.
I'm so excited to be here. I'm glad you found me.
Yes, I am too. So my first question would be, what is your inspiration for writing this book?
So this is I've always had a very active imagination. As a girl, I didn't do sports. I didn't do anything. I just played make-believe. And it's really embarrassing to admit this, that I played make-believe up until high school.
Oh, that was totally me.
I read all the time, and I was always a character in my mind. It's very nerdy, but
Oh, I'm right there with you. So you're fine. I'm totally that way. I think I'm still that way, and I'm 38 years old now. So
never outgrow it. It's a
yeah,
beautiful thing. Actually, a very embarrassing moment was in middle school. I remember just walking through the hallways reading a Star Wars book. I didn't have any friends. I was at a brand new school, and I was like, I don't need friends. I have friends in this book. And I was just walking in between class. Anyway, so some of my best friends have always been characters in books, and I've always loved transporting myself to new worlds and meeting new people through my imagination and through books. And I never thought I would write a book. It always seemed daunting. I never imagined in a million years I would write a book. The thought of writing more than 30 pages of anything seemed insane. But one day, I think it was last year, actually, it was almost a year ago, I was just driving with my son, and he had his permit, and we were at, he almost missed a stop sign, and a very vivid scene from a book came to my mind. Just a character who's Finn Hudson, the main male character in my book. An image just flashed in my mind about a scene, and that scene never actually made it into the final version of this book. But just from that, this character came to me. He's a single father. Well, he's a widower. He's a father to two teenage daughters, and so the scene came to me about him driving with his one of his daughters. And from there, I just built this book around it. I actually don't even remember how it came to me. It just very inspired. And from that, I just started writing, and yeah, so that's it. I think my imagination is just a
yeah,
crazy place to be.
that's awesome. No, that's great. It's so funny, like you said that I was totally that girl in school. Like I couldn't care less about anybody around me because my nose was stuck in a book. Like it's just insane. I started reading Shakespeare at 7, so
I love Shakespeare. Yes, we are like soul sisters.
so I totally. So does writing energize you, or does it make you kind of tired during this writing process?
There's been times where it's been a complete joy. So I think I'm a very visual, imaginative person. So when I have a scene in my brain and I'm just like, oh, I gotta write that process of when it's already in my brain and I feel inspired and I write, it's kind of thrilling and it's really energizing. But when I'm then trying to put all these scenes together and to make an actual storyline out of them,
Mm-hmm.
that was really challenging, and that took a lot out of me. And there were so many times where I just almost quit, and I was like, so it comes and goes. I have to be I'm like, how they have mood readers. Well, I'm a mood
Yeah.
writer. I have to write only when I feel inspired. The times where I forced myself to sit down and write when I wasn't inspired, it was always garbage, and I always had to rewrite it, and I always ended up having to throw it out. So there's a lot of really touching and emotional scenes in my book, and all those came from just random images from my imagination, and I just put them out on the page. So
Oh, that's awesome. So, are you a pantser or a plotter?
definitely. So I'm so new to this whole world that I only know what those terms are from last week. I was talking with
Ah,
who introduced me to the terms pantser and plotter. I'm definitely a pantser. I do not write in chronological order, and like I said, I'll get a scene. It plays in my mind like a movie, and then I'll
okay.
have to write it down, and then I'll have all these random scenes, and then having to weave them together in a plot. Yeah, so definitely pantser.
That's great. So what do you think your writing kryptonite has been for this book?
um, so actually, can you describe that question?
So like, you know how like Superman kryptonite was like his like weakness, like it
Yeah.
derailed him. Like, was there anything during your writing process that like if that happened, you were like, okay, this isn't working. I have to stop writing, or I'm done for today, or like got in the way?
I don't know, honestly. It's been really hard for me to juggle a full-time job and do this at the same time. When I first started, it was kind of just, I didn't actually think I would ever write it I didn't think I'd actually ever publish what I was writing. I just kind of did it for myself. And so I think once I started to get more serious and realize, maybe I can actually publish this, I think the struggle with me has been trying to balance maintaining healthy lifestyle and trying to write a book, because I have an obsessive personality, and I just dive in, and I shut everything else out. So my job got in my way. Definitely. I'm a lawyer by day, and so there were many times where I'm sitting at my office having to prepare for things, and I'm just like, wait, I gotta finish the sentence in my book.
Yeah. You're like, I don't want to be here. I want to be over there. Like, I don't have time for this. Yes. I've heard that a lot, actually, that it gets to be hard because you're passionate about the writing, but you have to do the other stuff, and it makes it a struggle
Yeah.
to find the balance. So then to follow up on that, when did you find time to write? Did you like make it a routine to like get up earlier, just stay up later, or just kind of like what you said, like just throughout the day when you had a moment?
In the beginning, when it seemed more like a hobby. It didn't seem like anything anyone else would ever read. Then I just kind of wrote as inspiration came to me in my free time. My children are in sports, and I remember writing a lot in the beginning, writing a lot when I would take my son to overnight or out of state lacrosse tournaments. I would stay up in the hotel room writing,
Yeah.
like on Friday night when we were traveling. And then as it came during the summer, I decided, I'm actually going to hire an editor. Maybe this is something that people might actually read other than me. And she gave me a really good positive feedback, and I had to change a lot. I had a lot of editing to do, a lot. But that's when I started having to carve time out. And really embarrassing to say this, we went to there was a family trip we did in August, and I pretty much took the entire trip trying to fine tune the ending of my book when I should have been with my family. So.
No, I get that. It happens when when it's like nagging at you or it's there in your mind. You're like, I have to get it out, because otherwise I'm gonna lose it.
Yeah.
And I, need to finish it.
Finishing
So
it actually gave me a lot of anxiety because I just wanted to get it right, and I wanted to get it right. I really fell in love with these characters. They mean a lot to me. And so I wanted to do the ending justice. And I had so much anxiety over getting it just right and doing the epilogue just right and all these little things. And so I couldn't focus on anything else until I made that happen. It was kind of stressful.
They're kind of like your babies, and like, so you have to give them the full well-rounded closed image before you step away from them and release them out into the wild, kind of.
Yes. I mean, it came to the point where I would sit into the hotel room. We were on vacation, and I forgot to eat because I'm like, I gotta finish this. It was actually not, it was not a good mental health position to be in, but I like to just, I don't know. It's like the suffering artist that can't focus on anything else.
I totally get that. I totally do. It's very, I feel when you're a creative person, because I have that background, when something is in my mind and it's not out of my mind on the paper or whatever it is, until it's that way, it's almost like a little nagging thing in my mind that will drive me crazy with anxiety until I get it out of there. And so I can totally like empathize and sympathize with you about like it will drive you crazy until you get it done the way it needs it to be. So I totally get that. So when you looked for an editor, did you interview or like do a lot of research, or did you already have like somebody in mind that you picked when you did the editing process?
I actually don't remember how I picked her. English Proper Editing Service, Hannah Wentz. I found her on Instagram, I think, and I am not a planner. I am not an organizer. I'm a very spontaneous, fly by the seat of my pants person. So I think I literally found the first person online. I was like, I'll just reach out to them because I was just I was moving forward. I was so energized. I just wanted to make this happen. And so I found her. She's amazing. I love her. She's helped me so much make this book something that's not just a jumble of scenes, but actually a readable story. I just kind of I've been stumbling my way through this entire process of publishing my first book. I've been very lucky in some ways that some things have just happened to work out, and that it hasn't been a complete disaster, but I've definitely learned a lot of lessons. I've made a lot of mistakes, but my philosophy in life is that everything always works out. I'm not a stressor. Usually I'm just like, it'll work out. And so maybe that's the wrong philosophy to have on life, but everything in my life has taught me that just works for me. So
yeah, I would agree. It's not worth stressing it over because 99% of the time, whatever you're stressing about isn't really going to happen. And it works out. Like there's very rarely a time where things go like really bad to where they're not like something you can fix and change.
The only thing you can do that's permanent is if you accidentally kill somebody or you die. And so I'm like, is anyone going to die from this choice? No, yes. And it's fine.
So when you reached out to her, were you already done with the book, or did you do it like midway just to get vibes about like, am I doing this right?
Yeah. So I highly recommend her for anyone who's looking for an editor. But what she does first is she'll alpha read your book. I think maybe it's better beta read. I don't know all the things.
Alpha would be the first one, and then beta reader the second round. Yeah.
So she said, I'll read your script all the way through. I'll edit the first 2 chapters. If you like my editing style, we'll sign a contract. And it was my first draft was 160,000 words, like insane. And so she suffered through all of that garbage. And then she gave me some really great feedback. She's like, these are the things that work. If you're going to change anything, these are what I would do. So she gave me that feedback. She edited the first 2 chapters, and I don't know. I feel like I have a different writing style than she typically does. I think she does a lot of more darker romance, and I'm definitely more on the rom-com humor side. But she did a great job, understanding my style of writing and editing around my style. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So during this time, do you feel like you ever experienced writer's block?
Yes, there were times where the ending was so hard to write for this book. And so in my mind, it played out one way. And then I tried to write it and it didn't flow well. And I struggled. I rewrote the ending probably 4 times. I even sent out my first arcs and then my first arc copies, and then I realized it's still not right, and so then I had to change it, and then I had to tell all my arc readers, like, read this new version. I felt all my arcs, all my arc readers, thank you so much for putting up with me. But I did struggle, and then I had to just sit back and just say, I need to just wait to be inspired and find that the ending just needs to come to me. I can't create something that out of nothing. I need it to come to me. So the inspiration hit, and I wrote the ending differently, and I don't think it's perfect, but I really like it, and I've gotten good feedback on it. So
Great. So if you were to go back, so it's about a year, you said. Mm-hmm. So if you were to go back in time, is there anything you would tell your younger writing self, like from a year ago, something that you've learned now after you've gone and finished it and gone through this process that you'd be like, hey, maybe try this or maybe do this, or I would do this differently?
I would tell myself to take more time and not rush. I was so eager to, when I realized, I'm going to do this, I'm going to try to self-publish. I was so eager to get it in someone's hands that it wasn't quite ready and I had to do so much editing. I would have spent more time kind of doing some of that self-editing process. But in a way, I maybe wouldn't tell myself that because it was a huge learning process. And I have grown so much. I've learned so much through the process, and I wouldn't want to take away from the things I've learned, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I get that. I totally get the notes over here. So I have two screens. So my like interview questions are over here and then you're on this side. So I look a little weird going back and forth. What did you feel like was the most difficult thing about writing this book for you?
My most difficult thing was getting the main female character right. So the first time I wrote her, my editor made some comment, like she's great. She's very encouraging. She never put me down. She never told me to change anything. But she said, I'm worried that your readers will not connect with her. I'm worried that some readers might think she's not likable. Okay. And that made me laugh because I basically wrote myself. And so I laugh about it now, but actually I laughed about it then too. So I had to make it more mainstream, and I was trying to be very original with this book, and I had to make her more likable, and I had to give her, so that I can't, it's hard to go into it without, going into details, but getting the main character, the female character just right was really hard. But once I found her voice, she wrote herself through the story. So it was hard for me to find her voice. And once I did, she just jumped off the page to me. And I've had some of my ARC reader, the reviews that I consistently get is that she is the funniest female main character that they've read recently. So I'm actually really proud of her. I'm really proud of my main female character, even though she was the most challenging thing about my book. But I think I finally nailed it a little bit.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm excited. I'm excited to dive in and read them. So was there anything that you found difficult about writing from the male perspective?
Actually, he was pretty easy to write as well. He's a super grump, but so with grumps, I love grump. So the hard balance with a grump is to make them still likable, like have the vulnerable moments. And so my story, one of my tropes is flashbacks. So he's a grump for a reason, and you learn about why through the flashbacks of his flashbacks in the books. Mm-hmm. And so it was really hard to get that balance. But the really grumpiness of him was easy to write because I just pictured, what would my husband say in this situation? So, yeah.
That's great. Did you ever go to him and say, like, hey, I'm going to read this. Does this sound right? Like,
no. My husband told me he's not going to read my book. And I don't know. I know he says it's not his style. And maybe I'm glad because he might find too much of himself in so much.
You're like, maybe don't read it.
Yeah, I remember saying that.
That's funny. So what was the hardest type of scene to write in your book?
Oh, definitely the spicy scenes. I don't actually read a whole lot of I don't read a whole lot because I read a lot at my day job, and I feel like if I read more romance novels, I probably would be better. It'd be easier to write them. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I could make them better, but every spicy scene has a reason in the book. It's not just for the sake of having it there. The main character struggles with performance anxiety, and mm-hmm. so every scene is important development-wise to his story. And that was a challenge to kind of write that because I never had that experience of performance anxiety, but it's a topic you don't see ever. You never see that. I've never seen this topic in any romance books. And so I had to do a lot of research about it. And I wanted to make it, I wanted that to one way for my book to be slightly different is I wanted to touch on this topic, which actually is a big issue for a lot of men.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, mm-hmm. It definitely is. So now that you're saying that, like, it's really I've not had a book really where that is addressed. I
Yeah,
don't
and
think.
it's
In a
funny.
lot of
I've never seen it, and everyone tells me I've never seen this in a book. So I hope that kind of reduces some of the stigma, or I hope someone
yeah.
feels seen from that. But I have to laugh because one person who initially offered to ARC read for me, she couldn't finish reading it, and she said, "Women want to read about unrealistically potent men. They don't want to read about men that
Yeah.
have performance anxiety." I was like, "Well, I guess that's not the book for you."
Yeah. No, I actually I love that. So I love books that represent like all the walks of life. So like autism, you know, hearing impairment, vision impairment. Like I've read this last year. I've read a handful of books that have had those topics, and I love them, especially the autism, because both my children are autistic and my husband's
Hmm.
autistic. So it's a big thing, and it's like, even though I want to escape, my daily life just to have something different, it's nice to see it from another perspective of like how other people live with it and how they deal with it and the struggles they have. Cause then I feel like I'm not this crazy person.
Yeah.
So I love that. I'm really excited to read that part of your book because I think that is a very big deal. Like I have heard that from like regular people, like that's been a struggle in their relationships. So to have it not be so taboo and like talked about, I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, and I thought it was so I wanted to write about it for that reason because I've learned through my research that a lot of men actually do struggle with this, and there's a lot of stigma and shame that they feel about it. And then I also wanted to write about it because I thought it was an interesting obstacle. So you hear about people are getting tired of the miscommunication, third act breakup. If it's done well, I have no problem with the miscommunication problem in books as the third act breakup. But I thought like, oh, here's an interesting topic to have here's an interesting obstacle to give the characters that's
Yeah,
not just like miscommunication. So
yeah,
I thought that was interesting. I
that's
hopefully people.
definitely a great perspective shift to come from that, because there's a lot of them. It's like a breakup, or it's like they had an argument, or they're moving, or like whatever the reason is, like and it's never something that would be so relatable because it is like I said, it is a topic that definitely is around in the world, and to bring light to it, that's really awesome. I'm excited to read it. I'm gonna like keep an ear out when I'm reading it and reading those parts and seeing how you took that, because I'm excited for that. So you said you didn't ever want to be a writer, it just kind of came to you one day. Was there a time like when you were younger that because you loved reading that you like thought, oh, maybe I'll be a writer one day?
I actually, so I shouldn't say I didn't think I ever wanted to be one. I just thought I never would be able to. The
Mm-hmm.
idea again of writing something that long, it seemed so daunting, such a huge mountain to climb. I didn't know how anyone did it. So it's kind of a accomplishment, and whether no one reads this book, it's just the fact that, hey, I wrote something. It's almost 400 pages. Um, and that just feels like a good accomplishment in itself. But
Yeah.
I did read a lot when I was a kid, and I had an active imagination. And I did create stories. I didn't always write them, but I would make my siblings act out plays that I wrote when I was a kid. And
Love that.
I have pictures of my brother in a dress and lipstick when he was 9 because convinced him to play a woman in one of my plays. I actually recreated a lot of Shakespeare, like The Merchant of Venice and
I
things.
love that. So, not to talk about me, but I'll tell you the story really quick. I can totally edit this out of the interview. But so when I was 7, I picked up. We had to do a book report at school, and our teacher took us to the book library at the campus, like the library there, and I picked it up, and she told me I wasn't allowed to read it, that it was not appropriate for my age group.
Which book?
And because I was in a resource class because I have dyslexia, so she was like, no, you can't read that, you have to pick something else. And I went home and I told my mom, and my mom went there the next day, and she's like, if she wants to do Shakespeare, she can do Shakespeare. Like, why would you tell her no? Like, no. So I ended up doing it, and I ended up writing my own version of it as a play and our class put it on
Ooh,
as a little play for my book report review of my book. So I totally love that. Like, I feel like we're kindred spirits right now.
I feel such a connection. Our like Shakespeare play love. Shakespeare
Exactly.
is so funny too. If people don't understand how funny, especially for his time period. But yeah,
Yes.
I
Yes,
love humor. Humor
it's
is
amazing.
yeah, humor is my therapy. So in a way, can you guys close it? Sorry. So in a way, sorry.
No worries.
In a way, humor is a form of therapy for me. So
Yeah, I love it. And I feel like, do you feel like now after, like, because you've read, a wide range, like it helped with your writing, bringing that to your writing, right?
yeah, so actually, I wish I read more books, and I feel like if I had read more books, I would have maybe had an easier writing process. So, in some way, I feel like my humor was developed based as a younger child, based
Mhm.
on the things I read, and but I've kind of always had an oddball sense of humor. I love things that are weird and different and strange, and I love people. I've always danced to the beat of my own drum, and so I love movies, and so a lot of it's also from movies. The movies that are just they like to see the world in a little bit different way, and they portray the world a little bit from a different angle, and so all of that kind of I feel like went into my book. All of that, if that makes sense. I'm just probably
Yeah, it
just
totally
rambling.
does. It totally does. So do you have a favorite character or side character in this book that's like, if you I know it's like a lot of authors say, well, that's like picking my favorite child, but is there one that you really are like, no, this one's my favorite?
In the book that's coming
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
definitely the main female character, Amy Jones. She's like she's just sassy. She is her inner monologue was so fun to write. Just
Mhm.
she's a reformed party girl, so she is just kind of like this 27-year-old flighty girl who's never done anything serious in her life, and she just chasing thrills, and she kind of is realizing that, oh, everyone's settling down. I need to grow up. I need to have something permanent in my life. I need to be serious.
Yeah.
But she keeps she's trying to change her ways, and she keeps falling into a cycle of not changing her. Like she's kind of like a
Like Groundhog Day?
well, it's more like she's kind of like, ooh, shiny, like, ooh, muscles.
Oh, okay.
She's like,
Really distracted. It's like distracted.
I'm done with flings. I want to find love. And then she's like, ooh, a man with a motorcycle. Ooh, man.
Yeah.
And so, she cracks me up. I love her so much. I wish she was real. I want to be her best friend.
I love that. The female characters, a lot of the time, they can either be like, really not nice and like very like black cat, or they can be, like the fun and flirty, but like you're like, okay, can you kind of like grow up a little bit and get your stuff together? And then seeing that process of when they're like, okay, yeah, I really have to grow up. And then watching them like go from that to that, that's like really rewarding for me as a reader.
Yeah. I what I believe in is characters who develop. And if at the end of the story your characters are this kind of similar to how you began. I mean, if some people truly read to escape, that's fine. I want to write characters. I want to see development. I want to see change. And both of my characters change and develop together in very significant ways. And it was really fun to write Amy because she is that she's not ditzy, but she's kind of like the party girl, sassy, not shy at all. And to see her really find her capacity to love at the end of the book, to me, it's still really moving to me. So I hope it connects with readers. I hope other readers enjoy that as much as I enjoyed having her, creating that moment for her.
So I love, like I said, I love reading books to escape, but I usually enjoy them more if I see the development, because then I'm like, okay, well, maybe, this about myself that I don't really care for, that I want to change. Maybe I can like get there, like get to that point where I'm, grown and had that, transformation. It's like inspiring, I guess would be the best way to describe it. Like
people can change. Yeah, people can overcome their flaws, or people can take their weaknesses and make them their strengths. And yeah, I agree with that.
I think that's a great thing. I love when books have that. So you kind of touched on it. So you would say out of your characters, your Amy's most like you as far as your characters go.
Yes, I definitely. She was a lot more like me before I made her more likable. So, I definitely relate to her the most spontaneous, fun. I hate to call myself fun, but I don't know. I think people would describe me that way. Always up for adventure, always wanting to try new things. So yeah, she's definitely the most like me.
So when you were writing, um, did you find that you enjoyed writing her more than Finn?
No, I had so much fun writing. He's so grumpy that I took it to the extreme in some of his inner monologues that it was just almost like laughable. It's like so his grumpiness is actually kind of funny in some ways. Like um so I actually had a lot of fun writing him as well, just taking his grumpiness to the extreme and just I don't know. So I had
Yeah.
fun writing them both. And the writing them together there's a lot of it's a slow burn, but there's lots of banter, and the banter was my favorite part to write. That part just jumped out at me. I didn't even have to write that. The characters just went at it themselves and wrote their own banter, and I had so much
I
fun.
love banter.
Yeah. I actually had to cut out so many scenes with banter because I could just go on forever. And my editor's like, "Well, it's getting kind of long, but it's your choice." And I was like, "No, I need to get to the heart of the story again." But
Yeah. Oh, I love banter. I'm excited. I'm so excited. So when you were doing your writing process, so you kind of wrote as you had scenes come together, and then you kind of like snippeted it like a movie, or did you then go and like kind of, well, this could go here, this could go here, and then like write in between scenes to like blend them together?
Yeah, so I started with I had a couple scenes really vivid in my mind that I went and I just wrote those because I was in the moment and I felt them and I wanted to capture that inspiration. And then I already knew kind of where in the plot line they would fall, and I had a kind of a general plot line, but then I had to go back in and tie them all together, and that was kind of a challenge because I just wanted to write the fun parts. I just wanted to write the banner, the interaction, the and then have now this has to have a plot now, darn it.
Yeah, you're like the murky in the between. You had to
Yeah.
like do that part.
Yeah, and I'm actually trying to write book 2 now, and I'm having the same problem where I want to jump right to the middle where the characters are interacting and they're fighting and they're challenging each other, but I'm trying to start at the beginning, and I'm like I keep wanting to jump to the meat of it.
Yeah. To like set them all up, but you're struggling with like the setup, like getting
Yeah,
them where they need to
exactly.
go. Yeah. So is this second book within the same like universe, so to speak, or same area? Like
They
it's
are standalones, but so the first book, the book that's being released in November 15th, is the main male character is Finn Hudson. He's a lawyer. He works at his own law firm, Hudson and Best, and his partner is Rebecca Best. And so the second book is about her. So they're standalones, but
but
I'm
Anson and
not
Finn.
sure. Yeah, I'm not sure how many of the I'm not sure if Finn and Amy will make an appearance yet, or how, to what extent in the second book. But
Yeah. Ooh, that'll be interesting to see how you do that. So when you were doing your writing, did you have like a certain like word count, or like were you like, I just want to get this scene done or this chapter done when you were sitting down to write, like a goal?
didn't even focus on word counts, and I actually at one point had to look at an author friend and say, "How long are books usually?" And I've learned that it's very typical for romance novels to be anywhere from like 60 to 90 words. And my first draft before it was majorly edited and made more really concise was 160,000 words. So way too long. I think at my final version is 120 something thousand words. So still on the longer side. Um, but no, I just wrote the book, and then at the end I realized how many words there are, and I didn't want it to drag, and I wanted it to be very concise. And so I think it's very rich because I had so much material to work with and I had to cut it back. So
Yeah, like picking the best parts of it to
mhm.
showcase it.
Yeah.
So you had that to work with. So when you were writing, did you have any parts of that you were like, oh, I really love this, this like part of the writing process. Like this is my jam. Like I enjoy this.
So let's see, like in the method of how I wrote it.
Yeah, like either or.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of, I'll have to repeat myself, but I think it's just, when the image, I think my favorite part actually of the writing process is not the writing, it's the imagining it. So,
Okay.
I'll just be doing something and trying to think of, in my mind. So I'll imagine the scene first a lot of times, and then it will become very vivid, and I'll have fun, like using my imagination to think about how the characters would interact. And then actually I go sit down and try to write the scene. And sometimes it goes in a totally different direction. And sometimes I like it, sometimes, so much better. And it's like, oh, where'd that come from? The characters kind of just wrote that for themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to close this. Hey, can I be right back? Okay. So you can edit, right?
Yeah, I can cut. You're totally fine.
Okay. People are loud out there. Can you hear, is there a lot of background noise?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, there wasn't. It just like 1 second ago, but yeah, before that there wasn't.
Someone
you're totally fine. So, how long did it take you to finish?
So I think I wrote for about a year, but there was a lot of times where there were several months where I wouldn't write anything, and I just didn't feel it. I just didn't have any new inspiration. I just kind of let it sit there. And then there were times where I wrote every night for a week. So, it was a year-long process, but not consistently.
Yeah. So when you went through to start, doing after you've had it edited and you're going to make the cover, did you enjoy that process of like, talking to a person about like, this is what I'm envisioning, or was that like a really daunting part of the task?
For the cover?
Mm-hmm.
It was really emotional for me. I think the cover designer is the first person I actually talked to about my book, honestly. I think I had a cover before I even discussed a lot of it with my editor. So I still haven't had many opportunities to actually talk about my book. It's been initially it was a very lonely process. It was just me sitting down writing my book, and I didn't even know if I was going to publish it. I didn't know if it was any good. I had a lot of self-doubt. And so the first time I actually told anyone about like what the story meant or what it was, I think my cover designer. I just reached out to someone on Instagram who I saw some of their work and I really liked it. And I just said, hey, what would a cover cost? And I spent a lot on my cover, but I love it so much. It's worth every penny to me. I just sat down and I said, she asked me questions about the book, and I realized, oh my gosh, I don't know how to answer these questions. I've never talked about my book with anyone. And it was kind of emotional to try to describe it. So, yeah.
Was it kind of cathartic after you did it? Because you're like, you let it out into the world?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it was actually kind of vulnerable, having to put it out there, having to describe it.
Life to it, kind of?
Yeah. It was something it was like peeling back a little, something that I just kept hidden for a year. I mean, the only person who knew I was writing anything was, I think, my husband. And I remember I do have a friend that is an author. Her name is Eve Casey, and her writing is amazing. And it's just very lyrical. She's just a great writer, and she always throws in something educational in her books, and her books are amazing. Everyone should check out her books. But she's the first author I met in real life that she's an indie author, and I didn't even know what an indie author was until I started talking with her. And I was like, oh, you can just write a book and just publish it? Like, oh, that's a thing. Yeah. And the first time she asked me like, what's your book about? I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't know. It's just there's 160,000 words here. How can I tell someone what that's about? And so I totally rambled to her, and I realized, I really need to find out what's my elevator pitch. I still don't know if I have it, but yeah. My tagline for the book is "Reformed Party Girl meets Troll Next Door," and I think
I loved that. When I read that, I was like, "Ooh, I love this! I can't wait to read this." That's a great little hook to get them. So I totally think that's a great.
I have to be careful though, because I do like monster romance, so I love Lady and the Orc. And when I said that, people were like a real troll, like a real troll. I was like, no, he's a grump and she calls him a troll. And so I've had to be very careful in explaining that to people. Like, people are expecting this to be a real troll creature.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Maybe you should do that for one of your stories. That might be fun.
I'm actually writing well, it's just a concept at this point. I really want to write a Bigfoot romance.
He's so cool.
Yeah.
That would be good. That would be a good one. That's a good one to go with. So what do you think makes a great story? Like, as for your opinion of like,
I think so. For me personally, two things. I entertainment is really subjective. What do people want in entertainment? For me, it's I want to laugh and I want to feel something like emotional. So my goal with my book was I just want to make people laugh and I want to make people cry. And I think this book has a lot of there's actually a lot of really heavy moments. I cried so much in writing some of these, especially the flashbacks. He's a widower, so you see kind of his life up to this point. And one scene in particular is kind of based on a real life situation. So like I cried a lot writing this book, and I was like, these aren't even real people. Why am I crying? Like, my husband I would be writing at like midnight on the kitchen counter, and my husband would come in and I'm like, just like bawling over at my laptop. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, my made up character is doing something made up and it's so sad.
I love that. I love that because then that means that they're really relatable and they're like jumping off the page at you. That's what that tells me. So what was the most surprising thing you've learned on this writing journey?
Most surprising thing. How expensive it is. Wow. To be an indie author. So I have so much respect for all indie authors. It's a hard thing to do, especially for your first one. It's very vulnerable, creating something and putting it out to the world and letting the world critique you. And I will admit that I've gotten really good feedback, but the imposter syndrome is huge. So I've had some people, I would, every review, I would pull it apart. Like, oh, they said they liked it, but are they just saying that to be nice? And oh my gosh, just creating something and putting it out in the world. It's such a vulnerable experience. I've had times where I sat and cried in the bathroom at work because I'm like, this is terrible. I don't want to do this anymore. It's too painful. It's too vulnerable. So, you know, it kind of, I don't know, maybe there are some authors that they don't let it get to them, but, I had so much anxiety over actually putting this out in the world. And then, so that and the expense, sorry, I'm kind of rambling. I'm all over.
Oh, you're fine.
But, you know, you have to buy your ISBN number, you have to pay for your cover design, you have to pay for editing, you have to pay for formatting, or you buy the software to do it yourself. And I've spent thousands of dollars, and I don't care. To me, it's not about money. If I don't make a dollar on this book, I don't mind. I really just want I want it to fall into the hands of people who will enjoy it and appreciate it, and who will love the characters. And to me, that's so meaningful. And I have a couple of people on Instagram who reached out to me and really said that it meant a lot to them. And so I already feel like I've accomplished that. So yeah.
That's great. So do you read the reviews, or do you kind of like, I'm not going to read them anymore?
So I have been reading them. So far, I only have good ones, but it's not published yet. So it's maybe it could be that some of the ARC readers, that if they haven't enjoyed it, they just decided not to review it, or they're going to wait till it's published and then put their reviews. So far, I have only really good reviews, and so I have been reading them all. But I do know a lot of authors that don't read their own reviews, and they have a friend go through and like pick out the good ones to tell them. I don't know what's going to happen after it goes live. I think the curiosity will get to me, and I'll just want to read the reviews, and then I'll probably cry at all the bad ones.
But, are you going to do anything special when it launches? Like anything to celebrate?
I don't know. I think I'm going to be a ball of anxiety. My biggest fear is that I'll release it, and then no one's going to read it except for my ARC readers, and then there's not going to be a single person who reads it beyond that. So I'm nervous about that happening. So
I'm sure there will be. I think there will be for sure. I love like I said, when I read the little blurb, I was like, "Ooh, I want to read this." So I will not be the only one. And there's a lot of people out in Bookstagram and Book Talk that are always looking for books that will emotionally damage them and like build them back up and
Yeah.
make them laugh, because we love that.
Yes.
So, I actually have, and depending on how emotional it is when I read it, I have on Mondays, I do Meltdown Mondays, where it's like a therapy session, and I talk about books that really like demolished my heart and like built it back up. And that's like my whole feature for that day. So, and I have a couple of things similar to that throughout the week that I post every week, depending on the book and how like I try to talk more about the emotions, because I'm a very emotional person, and I like to connect with people on that level when I talk to them, just in general, like at home. I think I sometimes intimidate people because I'll be making like really like eye contact, and they're all like,
Yeah.
so, so I like that. Like, I love to have a book where you really are feeling something, or it triggers some emotion, or it heals something in you, or it's, you know, that cathartic process, or it like changes your perspective on something. Those are the books that really stick with me. And those are the books that I like to read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in this book, there are lots of really heavy moments, but I tried to intersperse it with some really funny, light moments too, or just ridiculous moments. It's truly a rom-com, so there are scenes where you're like, this would only be in a rom-com, you know. And those are my favorite scenes. Those were the funnest, the most fun for me to write, like the kind of ridiculous antics that happen in the book.
Yeah.
But I felt like I wanted to have that balance where you feel for the characters, you hurt for them, and then the next scene, like you're laughing, and it's, I didn't want it to be all,
like, what are you doing?
Yeah. I didn't want it to be too heavy, but I didn't want it to just be only light. I did want it to dive deeper. So I hope I
have a good balance of both.
Yeah.
So do you feel like a lot of the scenes that you wrote, do you feel like in some way a lot of them are like from your own life, or they're just 100% totally just made up scenes, or did you draw any inspiration from your own life?
They're almost all 100% made up scenes. But there are a couple scenes where I'm like, I could see myself doing that. But yeah, they're all made. There is one flashback. And I don't think it's a spoiler to talk about it, but so he's a widower, you know that his wife dies, but there's a scene where there's a flashback scene where right after there's no on in scene death or anything. There's a scene after she dies that I think about it and I still cry, because it was a scene that happened in my life. And that's probably the only one, but I'm gonna start crying just thinking about it.
Fine, don't worry. So that was like the only time that you had it where you drew from yourself. Yeah. So what is your favorite part now about being a writer?
I love meeting new people. I've met so many readers and other authors, and I've met so many talented people who are putting out their own books. And I think that's been my favorite part. And then also hearing, there's a couple people, I only have like 20 reviews on Goodreads, but there's been a couple people who have reached out to me and just really enjoyed the book so much, and just having that, just I enjoyed the book, but to know like, oh, this is something that's beyond me, that it has a life of its own, and that people connect with. It's been really rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that definitely would be like a fulfillment to have that. You know, you set it out in the world and then have it come back. I'm scrolling down again. What is something now that you do to hone the writing craft for you now? Like, since this is your first book and now you're moving on to the second book, is there anything that you've done, like classes or different things that you're doing to like make yourself a better writer for the next time?
No. So I am Amy Jones. I'm a hot mess. I'm a dumpster fire. I don't learn from no, just kidding. I'm really struggling with book 2. I think I'm just a chaos person, a pantser.
So
I wish I could
with writing.
I wish I could say I learned and I know I'm now more efficient and can write better, but no, I think it's literally just throwing scenes on a page and then going back and then like, nope, I'm just scrapping stuff all together and rewriting the same scene over and over and trying out different endings, and it's kind of a mess, but I kind of love it. I thrive in chaos.
I think a lot of that, people that are like that side of the brain, I mean, I definitely am. And my mom will be like, you need to like straighten up in here. And I'm like, but it's chaotic organization and I know where everything is.
Right?
So
I know every time my husband gives me that look, like, could you please organize your stuff on the counter? Then I organize it and then I can't find anything. So
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I totally agree. I'm that way too. So what is like a unique or quirky fact that people don't maybe know about you? Something that
Ooh.
you
Oh
think,
gosh. A quirky fact. It's so funny. I usually have so many of these, but when you ask off the top of your, okay, so I always ask one question. I'm kind of like you. I don't like. I like to have a connections with people, and one thing I like to ask people is who their historical man crush is. And most
ooh,
people don't even think about it. I'm like, how do you not think about it? Like I think about it all the time. Like I love history and I love reading about history. And so my historical man crush is William Clark from the Lewis and Clark expedition.
ooh,
If I
that's
could meet anybody and go back in time and have a one night stand with anybody, I would have a one night stand with William Clark.
that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah,
Frontiersman, rugged, knows how to good with his hands, can live out, can shoot a bear,
yeah. That's
explore.
a good question. I've never actually heard that question. I like that question.
Now everyone's going to be thinking about it. What's your historical
Yeah.
man?
I'm like trying to think. I'm like, who would be mine?
Like a
Who would be mine?
Viking or
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I probably. Ooh. It'd probably be Shakespeare, and even though he was awful, Henry Tudor. I am obsessed with the Tudors, and I would just love to like be there and have like dinner with him and just like hear him.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if I would probably do the one night stand thing with him, but I would just want to hear like how his brain works in real life because that whole era of history was so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's a good one.
yeah,
And it's funny because we can romanticize about it, but I bet if I actually met William Clark, I'd be like, okay, you stink and you need to shave and you don't have deodorant. And I know I pass, hard pass. But in my mind, it's different.
your mind is like totally gonna happen. So, do you think you'll ever write like a historical romance?
I actually really want to write a romance between William Clark and uh, I always said her name Sacagawea, but I've heard people say Chicago. I say it differently, so
I always say Sacagawea, so
yeah,
I totally know what you're talking about.
but I've heard other historical people say it differently, so I'm probably saying it wrong. But I think that is there's gold there. Like she was married to oh gosh, I can't think of this French guy. I can't think of his name, and was having she's pregnant with his kid, but she's on this expedition with these two mountain men, a general army. They were actually members of the army. They were commissioned as it was a kind of a military kind of expedition,
Yeah.
but and like there's so many opportunities for him, like for William Clark and Sacagawea to like have these moments and fall in love. And he ultimately adopted her son that was born during the expedition. And so yeah, I always wonder like, did they have a thing? And I think in my mind they did have a thing, and I want to write that. Yes.
I want to read that. So
Yeah.
please write that and then I will read it. I will totally read that. I think that's great.
I think there'd be so much like forbidden love there. I think it'd be really good. Yeah. I think it could be really angsty
Yeah.
and they're probably will have romantic moments like under the stars in the wilderness. So
Yeah. Oh, you should totally do that. I love that. I love that. So we've talked. That's a plan for a future book, and then you have that one coming out. Is there any other plans that you have now that this one's going to be coming out in November?
Plans for next books after November.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I'm trying to write Rebecca's story, Finn's partner, and I'm struggling. I feel I'm struggling at the beginning, but I think once I find her voice, I think it will be good. I'm struggling right now with the characters, but I think I did this. It's the same thing with when I wrote this book at the beginning. They were kind of two-dimensional and the layers were added as I went. So
have you ever heard of a character profile?
I think I've heard the term, but I don't know if I would use it correctly.
That might help. Because it's like an interview like we're doing, but you interview your character. So you
Oh.
get to know like, and they ask like weird things, little random things like, "What's your favorite color? Or what's this? Or what's your view on that?" So it like really brings the characters to life. And I've
Hmm.
heard a couple authors say that when they're stuck and they can't fully hear the voice of whatever character, they do that,
Hmm. So
and
they
they
do
just
the interview
let whatever
internally?
comes to their mind, they write that down, and then they move on
Oh,
to the next one, and then they go back and read it, and then it starts to bring them more 3D in their mind.
okay. That's good. I should do that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's hard because I keep wanting to write. Amy and Finn both have very distinct inner monologues, and they have very distinct personalities. And so, trying to write something new, those type of personalities came really easily to me. The sassy, wild, spontaneous girl, and the really grumpy. Everything makes me mad, and, and
is she
kind of
more like a is Rebecca more like a wildflower or
she
shy?
she is more like I'm struggling, but I think what I've come up with is, so she's a lawyer, she's a female lawyer in a man's world, and so she's not a man hater, but she's very skeptical, and she's always trying to beat them in the courtroom, and everyone overlooks her and underestimates her, and so she's kind of a little bit she's not like a soft, I think she'll have to develop into a soft person towards the end, but she's very skeptical, and she's very proper, and like and so her love interest is going to be a man who is, once his goal is, he's in a band, like a cover band, but they want to be big, and that they've been together since high school, and he's like a dream, he's like been following his dream, very passionate, everything's about his music, he wants to make it big, and so I think he's going to soften her out, and then she's going to help him be more responsible, but
Yeah,
I'm still struggling on the
she kind of
details.
sounds like a little bit like a black cat female
Yeah,
character, where she's a
I
little more
don't.
rough around the edges,
Yeah,
but
I don't
softy.
want to write her that way. I want to, but maybe that's I don't know. Maybe I for some reason I don't think I can write black cats very well, because that's just not me at all. But
Yeah.
maybe I'll challenge myself, and
Well,
um
it could start that way because kind of how you're saying, like she's, trying to prove herself, and she's more,
yeah.
like observant, standoffish, but develops into kind of like a soft marshmallow later. I call
Yeah.
them toasty marshmallows when I do my reviews. They're toasty marshmallows because they're like a little bit crispy on the outside, and then you get inside and they're all sweet and like
Oh.
cuddly.
I
So
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I
yeah,
think she's kind of more like, she's used to being overlooked and like always passed over as for partner in bigger law firms, and she's kind of like, men always just get chosen, and their egos are too big, and she's really competitive, wants to always win,
yeah,
and yeah, so maybe that is a black cat, I don't know.
yeah. Or toasty marshmallow, maybe between the two.
Yeah.
Maybe between the two. I'm excited to read her. I think once you find her, I think that would be a really good story. I like what you're saying right now is like the baseline for it. It sounds like it's going to be really good.
Yeah, I have it
A
right
really
now.
good
It's
back
going to
and
be
forth.
a second chance accidental pregnancy type of thing. Like,
Yeah,
they're divorced at the beginning of the book, and I'm going to use flashbacks to tell the story of how they fell in love throughout the
yeah,
book. But it starts off they're divorced, and then there's a reason, and it's going to be the I don't think it's going to be a third act breakup. I think it's going to be, they're already broken up, so it's going to be
yeah,
him trying to explain his side of the story or something to
yeah.
her.
Oh, that'll be good. I love surprise pregnancy tropes. Those are like my favorite. I
People
know
love,
there's like mixed feelings on that, but I
yeah.
love every time a book says that. I'm like, I'm reading that. Like it's
People
happening.
love them or they hate them. People have very strong reactions. I think that they're done well, I enjoy them.
Yeah,
So yeah.
exactly. And I love like I love kids, so like I love having that little bit into a story, or like when they're a single parent, or like stuff like that. Like I love that.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
so if you had a message, or it could be more than one, but like a message that you want readers to take away from your book when they walk away after reading it, what would that be?
Ooh, I probably should have known this earlier. Um, hmm. Well, kind of the theme of the book is two people being there for each other, and helping each other through their rough times, having someone be your light when the rain falls, kind of is the theme, I guess. So I don't know if that's the takeaway, but that's how I would describe the mood in
Yeah.
in a nutshell.
Wonderful. I'm so excited. So the book comes out on the 15th of November. So definitely mark your calendars for that. And yeah, I'm really excited. So I will be reading my copy and I'll have my reviews up for you guys to check out on my Instagram. And I will also link how to find this book and all the information about you in the below comments. But if you have a book bestie that you think might enjoy the tropes or the story, please share this and definitely make sure to like and subscribe and follow on Instagram. And thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. I really loved getting to know you.
Thank you so much for having me. Now I can say I've done an interview. I feel legit now.
Oh, of course. I'm so happy to have you on.
I'm glad we could bond over our love of Shakespeare and writing plays.
Exactly. So that's why I started doing interviews, is because I am a small business owner, and you being a writer, you're kind of like your own small business. And so I wanted to support other people doing their crafts and crafting books and, you know, getting the word out for them. And like, when I start reading something, I do like a deep dive, and then I kind of go down a rabbit hole where I want to read like everything from that person. I want to know a lot about that person or that topic. And so that's why I started this, because I was like, well, we could read the book, but wouldn't it be great to get to know the person behind the book? Because, you know, they've kind of taken a little piece of them and put it in the book. So it'd be cool to see, you know, who they are as a person, get to kind of see how their brain works. And so that's why I started this channel, was so that readers could really get to know the authors behind their favorite books.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and definitely join me next time as we get a look behind the book. Bye-bye for now.